Aksyonov would be very happy today. And I'm not sure he's received so much attention in the last lately. My paper's on Vasilii Aksenov and Ardis Publishers, from Stal'naia ptitsa to Ozhog. A few words by way of introduction. I worked as editor at Ardis Publishers for a decade, from 1981 to 1991. The timeline for my talk today is roughly the mid-70s through 1980, so I was not involved in any of the events that I'm going to talk about. This past summer, I spent a week in the Ardis archive at the University of Michigan library, researching the 1970s for the most part, beginning with A for Aksyonov. I knew that Aksyonov had played an important role in the history of Ardis, but I had no idea how great or multifaceted a role. The letters illustrate quite clearly just how important he was for Ardis. A large part of the correspondence is in English. I have silently corrected Aksyonov's English. Of course, Aksyonov was perhaps the best-known contemporary Soviet author published by Ardis in Russian, and the most successful, if you gauge success not on the ability to publish your best work, but on material success. For example, overseas travel. In his memoir, In Search of Melancholy Baby, Aksyonov writes that he first heard about the proffers in 1971 from Raya Orlova and Lev Kopylov, neighbors in the same writers' cooperative apartment building by Metro Aeroport. They showed me the first issue of Russian Literature Tri-Quarterly and one of the first reprints, maybe Kotik Litayev. A small aside here, I'll mention that Kotik Litayev was not a reprint, but the first English translation, and another example of why you need to cross-check facts in memoirs. These few sentences illustrate how, in Mark Lipovetsky's words, Ardis became a zone of intersection of several circles. The circle of Nadezhda Mandelstam, with whom the proffers were great friends, the circle of the airport liberals, in which Lev Kopylov and Raya Orlova played an important ideological role. An offshoot from this latter circle was Aksionov's Metropole group. And finally, the circle of Brodsky and his friends with their own particular aesthetic views. One can quibble about a few things here, but as the Aksyonov proffer correspondence shows, the Aksyonov circle was much more than a mere offshoot, and Aksyonov began to play a major role in the Ardis operation well before Metropole. At the risk of running ahead of myself, Lipovetsky's scheme also reveals the gaping hole left behind after the Aksyonov and Kopylovs emigrate in 1980. The Aksyonov-Ardis correspondence begins with a letter dated Paris, September 4, 1976. He's traveling with his mother, Yevgenia Ginsburg. By this time, Aksyonov knows the proffers well. They have visited him in Moscow. Aksyonov describes the invasion of the Ardis entourage in Peredelkino one winter in the 1970s, which included the proffers' 3 young boys, Alandea's brother, Karl's mother, and 2 Ardis editors. And Aksyonov visited them in Ann Arbor on their way back from Los Angeles, the trip to America that he writes about in Krugliye Sutki Non-Stop. But back to the letter. The short handwritten letter in which he informs the proffers that he has written his agent Schroeder, whom Olga Martich mentioned, who will later become the bane of Karl's existence, that he would like to see the publication of a volume of stories in Russian and English. And then he moves on to Zolotaia, nasha, zhelezka, which he wrote in 1972, and which VAP has a copy to sell translation rights. Doubleday has passed on it because it is too avant-garde. Aksyonov offers the English and Russian language rights to Ardis. But what we don't find out till several letters later is that the Russian text that VAP has is deliberately missing several pages that were removed because of censorship. As Karl Proffer writes in May 1977, we received Zolotaia nasha zhelezka from VAP, and I will bear in mind the missing pages. The texts have been deemed unpublishable in the Soviet Union, though evidently not so anti-Soviet to prevent VAP from selling translation rights, as they had received special permission for export. The Russian text was eventually published by Ardis in 1980, the same year as Ozhog. The English translation did not come out until 1989,